Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Buddhist Insights Empty Cloud. There's a little change in the schedule, right? As you have noticed, there was another event previously listed, and then my event was listed yesterday. I didn't know I was going to be giving this event until this talk until later. That's why yesterday I was saying goodbye, all my goodbyes and everything. But I'm back. I'm filling in for Aya, who's in Thailand, so I'm here to complete. Actually, this is a great opportunity because now I'm able to finally finish and talk about the last Panchindriya, right? Panchaindriya, the last of the five spiritual faculties. And the first one that we did, right, was faith, saddha. Then after faith, we went to vidya, which was energy. Then yesterday we did sati and samadhi, right? Bare awareness, lucid awareness, attention, and samadhi, which stillness of mind or unification of mind, a unified mind. And today we'll be covering Paññā. So yeah, just a couple hellos here from Bhumika, Karuna, Usha, Manal, Harji. Good morning to everyone who is tuning in, and good morning or good day, good evening to those of you who are in the future and watching this in the future. May you be well and happy. I hope that you're having a good day so far, or night, or evening, or morning. So before I start, I'm just going to pay my respects to the Buddha. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhase. So hello to Charles Lee, yeah, and Amaranta. Hello to all of you. So today we're on Paññā, right? Paññā usually translated as wisdom. I mean, it's okay. I don't like that. I don't really like that translation. We have a lot of these weird ideas about what wisdom is, right? In the West, like it's an old person, or it's like, I don't know, mystical or something like that. Yeah, wisdom is not my favorite kind of idea for it. Paññā, right? So we have the main word there is ñā. Ñā just means a knowledge, right? Ñā comes up in so many different contexts in the suttas. It just basically means some sort of knowledge. And pa is a prefix which like heightens or emphasizes that type of knowledge, right? So it's some sort of super knowledge, a heightened knowledge, right? A special knowledge. Paññā, super knowledge, special knowledge, a heightened sort of knowledge, and not a regular knowledge, right? Not a knowledge of like being very intellectual, or a knowledge of someone who has a lot of experience in some sort of craft, right? It's not a worldly knowledge about like how many stars there is in the galaxy, or a worldly knowledge on how to build an iPhone, or how to speak like 10 languages, or anything like that. That's not the kind of knowledge we're talking about, right? Paññā or prajna. We're talking about a special kind of knowledge, right? In this, we're referring to the knowledge that the Buddha obtained, right? The Sammasambuddha, or the knowledge of all the Sammasambuddhas, right? The Dhamma, which is that which brings us in alignment with reality, right? That which harmonizes us with reality. That knowledge which is in line with reality, right? And doesn't go against reality, doesn't conflict with reality, right? That knowledge is a mere reflection of what reality is, right? That's what Paññā means, right? So it's more than appearances, right? More than the knowledge of appearances, more than the knowledge of inferences, right? More than the knowledge of deduction or logic and all these things, right? It's a transcendental knowledge, right? It's kind of a beyond normal kind of knowledge. That's what Paññā means. Hello to Jayanta and Sud. So this is what we mean when we talk about Paññā, right? And usually when we talk about Paññā, people will refer to the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths, right? And not just like knowing dukkha knowing samudaya, knowing nirodha, and knowing magga, right? And it's three parts, right? Dukkha, there is dukkha. Dukkha is to be understood. Dukkha has been fully understood. There is the origination, right? Which is tanha. It should be eliminated and has been completely eliminated. There is nirodha, which means nirvana, right? It should be realized and has been completely realized, right? Brought into fruition. There is magga, the Noble Eightfold Path, right? It should be developed and has been fully, completely developed, right? These 12 aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path. That is Paññā, to develop this, right? That is the Paññā. We're not talking about Paññā as memorizing the Four Noble Truths or being able to make some logical argument, right, about the Four Noble Truths. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about understanding dukkha, right, experientially, knowing the truth of dukkha, of unsatisfactoriness, of suffering, of pain, lamentation, despair, sorrow, all the bad things, right? Knowing the truth of the origin, right? Kama tangha, bhava tangha, vibhava tangha, right? And working on eliminating it. This is the knowledge of how to eliminate it, working on eliminating it, right? We see how it begins to diminish and go away. That's the other super knowledge to have. The knowledge of the Aryas, right? The Arya Dhamma, right? The special teaching of the Aryans, the awakened ones. Then there's Nirodha. Nirodha means nirvana, right? Knowing about it, realizing it, right? Working towards realizing it. Stream entry, non-returner, once returner, non-returner, and arahant, right? Having this experiential development of awakening, right? That is the practice. That's the kind of knowledge, knowing for yourself, right? Tasting liberation for yourself. And the path, right? Experiencing for yourself, like there is magga, there is the Noble Eightfold Path. It is to be developed. You're developing all the samadhi, right view, right motivation, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right awareness, and then right stillness, right, for the samadhi. So this is the kind of knowledge. It's a very applicable knowledge, something that we're doing. It's not relegated only to conceptual knowledge here when we're talking about in the sense of Paññā. Paññā has to be experienced. We're not just talking about what other people said or coming to our own conclusions, or because other people told us about something or we read it in a book. Paññā means a knowledge that you have gained for yourself, right? And then sometimes in the suttas, we'll see like the Noble Tenfold Path, right? In the Noble Tenfold Path, you actually see that the ninth step is knowledge, right? Samanyana, like having that knowledge, which means Paññā, for yourself, knowing for yourself, right? Paññā is a result of the practice, right? It's a fruition of the practice, right? It's a consequence of the practice. So this knowledge comes through practice, exercising, right? Like doing it for yourself. It's experiential knowledge that you get. That's what we mean by this hidden knowledge, right? This knowledge of liberation, of freedom, of happiness, of sukha. That's what we're talking about here when we're talking about Paññā. Also, Paññā, we can talk about it as penetrating the panchakhandhas, like understanding the five khandhas, right? Being able to see the panchakhandhas and how they arise, persist, and cease, right? How they're ephemeral, how they're changing, how they're absent of a self, how they should not be personalized, how they are not me, myself, or I, right? And by doing that, we begin to withdraw our upadana, right? Our personalization, our clinging, our attachment, our identification with the khandhas, right? That's another experiential knowledge as we begin to disidentify with the panchakhandhas, with the five khandhas. Another one is the idapachayata paticca samuppada, right? Usually translated as dependent origination. Being able to see, right, how the world arises, right? How experience arises, how the self arises, how samsara arises due to this series of antecedents, right? Concurrent antecedents or dependent origination. Conditionality, interdependent conditionality. There's many ways we can talk about it, this process. But that knowledge of seeing for yourself, right? These 12 links, or sometimes it's not always 12, but seeing the links of dependent origination, right? This necessary conditions for the perpetuation of suffering and rebirth and building of the self, how the self keeps going from one moment to one moment, from one life to the next. That's also an experiential knowledge that you get for yourself. Another way that we can talk about Paññā is through the three knowledges that the Buddha got under the Bodhi tree, which I think I talked about yesterday too, which was the knowledge of his past lives, right? He looked back, he saw when I in this life I did this, I was reborn according to my actions like that. In that life I lived like this, and then I was reborn like that. And then he had the second knowledge, was of beings passing away and arising due to their actions. And then he had the knowledge of the asavas, right? So these three knowledges also come under the understanding of Paññā. He experienced for himself. The Buddha wasn't like a philosopher under the tree, trying to figure things out intellectually. He had to see for himself these things, right? He claims personal experiential knowledge of these things, right? And it's more than the worldly knowledge. We can't at this time run some sort of experiment to see if past lives are true or karma is true, or if there is such a thing as tanha, or if there's these asavas and things like that. We can't run that. It's not an empirical experiment that we can run. And it's not enough to run like a thought experiment, right? A theoretical experiment. That also wouldn't be Paññā. So we can't get through it through current empirical evaluation, and we shouldn't rely just on logical deduction, right? Or inferential knowledge, or just take it on someone's word. That's what we should never do. Just take it on someone's word. That's probably the worst one. It's just like basically a rumor, something that you've heard. But Paññā is that knowledge, right? That knowing that arises for seeing for oneself, seeing clearly, right? That's why we see this word all the time come up, like diti. Diti means like to see. We have pasana. Pasana also means to see, and we see this kind of language of like seeing for oneself, experiencing for oneself, right? These knowledges, this understanding, it's something that one knows for oneself, right? And you won't need external validation or any other kind of validation besides knowing for oneself. So this is kind of like setting up what Paññā is, right? Like, okay, now we know what we're kind of talking about. So I want to share with you a particular sutta where it talks about two types of Paññā, right? Two types of Paññā. This is the sutta called that we'll find in the Anguttara Nikaya, right? So Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Fours, Sutta 186, right? So I'll give you some time for you to pull that up if you like, right? Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Fours, Sutta 186. And it's called Ummagga Sutta. Ummagga Sutta. Ummagga Sutta. I know some of you like to follow along at home, and you've asked me for the suttas before. So here we go. Then one of the mendicants went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, "Sir, what leads the world on? What drags it around? What arises and takes control?" Very interesting, right? What leads the world on? What keeps the world going? What drags it around, right? What moves it? What moves the world? And what arises and takes control of the world, right? Very interesting question this monk puts to the Buddha. Then the Buddha says, good, mendicant. Your approach and articulation are excellent. And it is a good question for you to ask. What leads the world? What drags it on? What arises and takes control? Yes, sir. Mendicant. The mind leads the world on. The mind drags it around. When the mind arises, it takes control. Right? Mano puppangama dhamma manosetta manomaya. Right? Dhammapada verses 1 and 2. Saying, good sir, that mendicant approved and agreed with what the Buddha said. Then he asked another question, right? Sir, they speak of a learned memorizer of the teaching, right? Who is a memorizer of the teaching? How is a learned memorizer of the teaching defined, right? How do we define a learned memorizer of the teacher, of the teachings? Good, mendicant. Your approach and articulation are excellent. And it is a good question. I have taught many teachings, statements, mixed prose and verses, discussions, verses, inspired exclamations, legends, stories of past lives, amazing stories and classifications. These are all the different ways the Buddha teaches, right? So the Buddha taught statements, mixed prose, verses, discussions, verses, inspired exclamations, legends, stories of past lives, amazing stories, and classifications. But if anyone understands the meaning and the text of even 4 lines, a 4-line verse, and if they practice a line with that teaching, they're qualified to be called a learned memorizer of the teaching. Saying, "Good sir," that mendicant approved and agreed with what the Buddha said. Then he asked another question. "Sir," they speak of a learned person with penetrating wisdom, right? How is a learned person with penetrating wisdom defined? Good mendicant, your approach and articulation are excellent, and it is a good question. Take a mendicant who has heard, "This is dukkha." They see what it means with penetrating wisdom. They've heard, "This is the origin of dukkha. This is the cessation of dukkha. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of dukkha." They see it, what it means with penetrating wisdom. And that's how a person is learned in penetrating wisdom, right? So who is a person who has penetrated wisdom, right? A person who sees dukkha, right? Sees the origin of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the practice that leads to the cessation of dukkha. That is a person of penetrative insight, right? We can say penetrative insight, penetrative wisdom. And this is kind of, I feel like, what most of us, or many of us, have focused on. There's a great emphasis on this kind of paññā, right? On this type of knowledge, super knowledge, the knowledge of the 4 Noble Truths, the knowledge of the 5 khandhas, the knowledge of the Paticca what I was just sharing with you earlier, right? There seems to be a great emphasis, at least in the communities that I've been around. And it seems like to a vast majority also in Asia, and for a good reason, right? It was that knowledge that liberated the Buddha, the Bodhisattva Prince Siddhartha, and helped him become the Buddha. So there's a great reason why we put so much emphasis on this knowledge. But it's not the only type of knowledge. It's not the only type of paññā, right? So many times people focus just on like insight meditation, right? Vipassana meditation, to gain this kind of knowledge, right? Into how reality works, which is important. It's very important, right? But in my personal experience, I feel it's overemphasized, in this type of our wisdom, our super knowledge is very limited to one dimension of knowledge, right? I believe that paññā, and we'll see that paññā is actually multifaceted, right? There's so many different facets, right? So many different more characteristics to paññā. Paññā is just more than that, right? More than this. And we see it all the time manifest itself in the Buddha's actions. And what kind of paññā am I talking about? It's going to be very interesting. We'll see now. What is the other type of paññā? After the Buddha said that one who is learned in penetrative wisdom knows dukkha, its origin, its cessation, and its practice, then the sutta says, "Saying, 'Good sir,' that mendicant approved and agreed with what the Buddha said." Then he asked another question, right? So the monks can ask another question to the Buddha. "Sir, they speak of an astute person with great wisdom." How is an astute person with great wisdom defined, right? How do we know? What defines a person who's an astute person with great wisdom? Then the Buddha says, good mendicant, right? Good, bhikkhu, sadhu, bhikkhu. Your approach and articulation are excellent. And it is a good question. An astute person with great wisdom is one who has no intention to hurt themselves, or to hurt others, or to hurt both. When they think, they only think for the benefit of themselves, for the benefit of others, for the benefit of both, and for the benefit of the world. That's how a person is astute of great wisdom. Maha-paa. Maha-paa is what it's called. Someone of great wisdom, right? Of great super knowledge. What does this sound like, right? Think about it. What are we talking about here? Someone who has vast wisdom or great wisdom, right, is a person who has no intention, right, of hurting oneself, hurting others, or hurting the world. One who only thinks for the benefit of oneself, of others, and the world. What is that, right? That's what we just call in general compassion, right? Like compassion. So usually when we talk, especially like in other like Mahayana circles, they talk about like wisdom and compassion, or in the Vajrayana, wisdom and compassion, right? as two different things. But here we see that wisdom and compassion are both just wisdom, right? Compassion is wisdom. There's no separation. It's the same thing, right? We're not separating it. And sometimes we think that, oh, this is a later idea, right? This thing of wisdom and compassion is a later idea, or compassion is not that important. Compassionate is just like metta, karuna, mudita, the Brahma Viharas. That's not real wisdom, right? The real wisdom is the Four Noble Truths. That is the real wisdom, right? Insight is the real wisdom. Well, here we're seeing that wisdom, Paññā, has to do with harmlessness, nonviolence, right? Not only nonviolence, but doing good. There's the two sides, right? Not harming others and oneself, and also doing what's beneficial for oneself and for others. That is also wisdom. That is also Paññā. And it's the prefix for it is hidden because it says maha-paa, right? Great. It's great wisdom. It's a great wisdom to have, right? So this compassion, this benevolence that we have, this non-harming attitude that we have towards the entire, to all beings, to the entire world, is wisdom, right? Is wisdom. It's not something lower than wisdom. It is wisdom itself to have this knowledge, right? And it says vast, great, right? So I think about compassion, loving kindness, the concern for the welfare of other living beings to be kind of like horizontal, right? Horizontal knowledge that covers the entire universe, right? That's why when we practice loving kindness meditation, metta bhavana, we think above, below, to the front, behind, side to side, all beings, whether near or far, large or small, human or non-human, known or unknown, may all beings without exception be happy. May they be well. That's vast. Apamanya, right? The Brahma Viharas are spoken as apamanya. Apamanya means limitless, countless, right? That means great and vast. That is a great wisdom to have, right? To be concerned for the well-being of all and not to hurt any beings, right? That intention not of harmlessness, the intention of harmlessness is great wisdom. So we can imagine this wisdom. There's a level of wisdom that covers the entire universe. We encompass the entire universe, all living beings, all samsara with this wisdom, the knowledge of all beings, right? We think about that. Have a visualize a big sphere of knowledge encompassing the entire universe. Now we're going to go back to the other type of Paññā, which is penetrative wisdom of the Four Noble Truths. What type of wisdom is this? This is the kind of wisdom that dissects and penetrates into this field of reality, right? And opens it, and we're able to see how reality works, right? It's conditionality. We're able to see Paticca. We're able to see the Panchakanda. We're able to see the Four Noble Truths. With Four Noble Truths is just a short version of Paticca. So then we're able to see how reality works, right? The inner parts of it. So we have this vast wisdom that covers the entire universe like a blanket. And then we have a wisdom that's able to dissect and break into that sphere, right? And see how all the components work. So we need both of these types of wisdoms, right? That is wisdom. The wisdom of compassion that embraces all of reality, and the wisdom of penetrative, right? Insight wisdom, which sees reality for what it really is, right? And we can only see reality for what it really is when we have the entire view of reality, when we're able to encompass the entire world completely. And that's what samaditi is, right? Samaditi. Sama means complete, the whole thing, right? Nothing is absent. It's the whole thing, encompassing the whole thing, samaditi, right? Samaditi also includes knowing what's right and wrong, right? And what is wrong? To hurt oneself, to hurt others, to hurt both. What is right? To do what's good for oneself, to do what's good for others, to do what's good for all, right? That is samaditi too. So within samaditi, we have both this penetrative wisdom and this vast wisdom, right? The penetrative wisdom of samaditi is that of the Four Noble Truths. The vast wisdom of samaditi is understanding what is wholesome and what is the unwholesome, right? Understanding karma, good actions and bad actions, right? The Buddha on many occasions says that those people who don't understand actions and their results, right? People who say there's no mother, there's no father, there's no right and wrong, there is no next life, there is no heaven or hell, there is like all these things that are basically negating karma, right? Action, good and bad. He says that is wrong view to have that view. What is the right view, right? That there is merit. There is merit to doing good for religious people, for mom and dad. there is good and bad actions that lead to good and bad consequences and good rebirth, right? We're talking about this vast wisdom, this compassionate wisdom towards the world, right? That is also part of right view, Sambaditi, and it also connects with the 10th step. I mean, with the ninth step of the noble tenfold path, which is samanyanya, right? Right knowledge, the understanding of both the vast wisdom, which is compassion, what's beneficial for myself and all beings and not detrimental for them, and also understanding the penetrative wisdom of how reality actually works in its components. So I find that this is a very broader way of trying to understand wisdom. And I feel that, at least from the circles that I've been in, of Theravada or Insight kind of, or Western or more modern Protestant Buddhist circles, there's a big emphasis, on the Four Noble Truths, and which they are very important. We cannot dismiss them, and it is that one particular knowledge that helped the Buddha, and all the Arahants become awakened. But there is also this great emphasis on the well-being of oneself and others, and we see this emphasis very much in the Mahayana tradition and its, other aspects of it, or if we want to classify the Vajrayana, like, as his own thing or part of Mahayana, we see them with this big emphasis, right, on compassion. Compassion is very important, loving kindness, Brahma Viharas, the understanding. Why are we doing this, right? When we look at the story of Prince Siddhartha, one of the things that we get in the story is that he was going to be the king, right? Or he was going to be the one to take over the kingdom or that land. And he had a concern for the well-being of his citizens, right? He's like, I'm the king, I'm responsible for their well-being, but they're all going to get old, sick, they're all going to die. And he wanted to find a solution for them, right? He wanted to find a solution for his family. He wanted to find a solution for all these beings that are suffering. How can I help? It wasn't just his own suffering, right? His own suffering, actually, he doesn't really suffer that much. In all the stories of Prince Siddhartha, he's worried about the bird who gets shot by Devadatta. He's worried about his citizens of his kingdom. He's worried about all these other beings, right, that are going to suffer. And he's never really worried about himself, right? He doesn't take the spiritual quest for his own just selfish reasons because he doesn't feel good, right? He actually lives a very luxurious life. And what is it that propels him, in the mythic story? He sees other people suffering. He sees a dead person, right? He sees an old person. He sees a sick person, right? And he's like, wow, he's distraught by seeing this person being sick and knowing that everyone that he knows and loves is also going to get sick, get old, and die, right? So what propels Prince Siddhartha, the Bodhisattva, to take on, this mission of awakening, of spiritual liberation, is that compassion, that concern, right? That maha-paa, that great knowledge of not wanting to harm others, oneself and others, not wanting to see them suffer, and working towards their benefit, right? For the benefit of himself, for the benefit of others, and for the benefit of the world. That is wisdom. The Bodhisattva had great wisdom to be able to act upon, the things that he saw in the world and work towards spiritual liberation. He also, when he was able to discern not to give in to self-indulgence and not to practice mortifications, right? He had a lot of understanding of self-compassion or inner compassion, right? When he said, why am I torturing my body? I didn't see any benefit from starving myself to death and practicing all these asceticisms. And then he thought about practicing jhana, and then he's like, oh, wow, that's very pleasant. Why was I scared of this non-worldly pleasure, right? That's a compassionate response to his pain and to the world, right? So he found that middle way. That middle way was found through this understanding of great wisdom, right? That things shouldn't either be too indulging or too painful, and things should be done for one's own benefit and for the benefit of others. So he was able to practice in a way which brought benefit to himself because he was practicing through jhana, and jhana is very pleasant, right? It, as we talked about yesterday, it's a good abiding, a calm abiding here and now. And also through this practice of jhana, he was able to realize full awakening, get the penetrative wisdom, which was for the benefit of all beings. He was able to share that, right? So they're so entwined. Without this concern, without this big heart, without this big mind, without caring for the well-being of all humans and all animals and all devas and all nagas and gandhabas and all beings throughout the universe, it seems very unlikely that you'll be able to get this wisdom, the penetrative wisdom, right? The other kind of wisdom that we want. So sometimes, I feel like if we're struggling a lot with, like, in our meditation, or just even out of meditation, to really grasp the Four Noble Truths, right? To really grasp uh, Paticca Samuppada, right? Maybe we have to kind of, look at vast wisdom. Maybe we need more metta, karuna, mudita, upekha, right? I love this verse, and that you find many places, but right now I'm remembering it's in the Sutta Nipata. He goes, as I am, so are they. As they are, so am I. Taking this into consideration, or this is the basis, one does not harm living beings or ask another to harm living beings, right? That's a great knowledge to have in this world. Many people don't have that knowledge. It's a super knowledge because it goes beyond oneself, right? And it's complete, sama. It thinks about all beings, not only me, or not only others and not me, which is very sacrificial, right? Everyone's more important than me. I'm no one. I can sacrifice myself. I don't matter. It's everyone. It takes all beings into consideration. That is a vast knowledge, maha-pāññā, right? Super vast knowledge that encompasses everything. So my invitation to you is to investigate this great wisdom, investigate this loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. Investigate harmlessness, right? Investigate these things. You'll see that it's a great fuel, motivation, right? Drive to get you to practice, right? Sometimes we may struggle with our practice. Why study the suttas? Why meditate? Why go to the temple? Why do all these things? I'm too tired. But when you start thinking about the suffering of all beings in the world, right? And you start thinking about the benefit also that you can bring all beings in the world, right? Both the detrimental and the beneficial that you can bring to the world by practicing the Dhamma, whether it's studying, meditating, doing pujas, doing dana, or just visiting the temple or hanging out with your kalyana mittas. That motivation to do those things comes from this vast wisdom, right? This compassion and loving kindness, this concern for all beings, that everyone that you know, every living being is going to get sick, old, and die. Right? Imagine this is like such a motivating factor, right? That's why we meditate on anicca, and that's why we meditate on mara, on right impermanence, and we meditate on death. But not only our own, right? On all beings on the world, that everything is unstable. Anicca, it's not stable, it's impermanent, it's transitory, and everything is of the nature to die, and cease. That's a great fuel to keep you to fuel your practice and to keep you motivated to investigate and practice. So for me, this understanding of the great wisdom, and why I'm putting so much emphasis on it, is because it's a great way to keep you practicing. It's a great motivation, it's a great inspiration. And I think that's why many in Mahayana focus on the bodhisattva vow, right? And bodhicitta. I mean, they're right in that sense that, man, it's a great way to get you motivated to practice. Like, I do really believe that if we focus on maha-pāññā, it's the best fuel that we can have. Instead of a lot of our, especially in the West, and the people that I've known, we have very selfish reasons for practice, right? Oh, my own dukkha, my own mental health. I did, I had my own personal losses. Me. It's all about me. It's all about my dukkha, right? And what can the monks give me? What can the temple give me? What can the Buddha give me, right? We even run away to Asia, go to these forest monasteries for selfish reasons. All about me, myself, and I, right? That's not the fuel for awakening. That's not what Prince Siddhartha did. It wasn't about him. It was about him seeing the old man, seeing the dead body, seeing the sick person, being concerned for the welfare of all his citizens, of all the other Sakyans that were going to die, right? That was his motivation to reach awakening. It wasn't about his own dukkha, It wasn't about that. We have to focus on this great wisdom. We need to be established in this great wisdom so we have the proper fuel. Selfless motivation, right? Sama sankappa is a selfish motivation. That's what we need, right? Nekama, avyapada, avihimsa. Renunciation, which just means letting go, right? Not having it be about you. Letting go about your own drama and stuff. It's not about you, right? Non-anger, right? Non-aversion towards what's going on in the world. We don't run away from our problems, You can't run away from your problems, even if you go to the Tibetan mountains, you go to a monastery in Zen monastery in Japan, or you go to the forest in Thailand, wherever you go, you take your drama with you. You know, you can't run away from your drama. It's going to follow you wherever you go. Or you'll find new drama like mosquitoes or maybe other meditators who are there and are a little annoying. You can't run away from the world, right? There's no way you can go in the Rohitasa Sutta. That's what the Buddha tells Rohitasa, right? There's no way you can escape dukkha by traveling in space. There's no safe place. There's no safe space in samsara. So stop trying to run away. You can't go away from it. No matter how much seclusion you try to practice, you're just going to get frustrated, right? So I know this is kind of my own rant, but this is my last day and it's unexpected, so I had to come up with something. So this is the something that I came up with, an invitation, right? And I want to let you know how serious a matter this is that we're in, right? We have a precious human life. All human life is very precious in the sense that we all have the potential for awakening, right? And all life is very ephemeral. You know, not only flies and cockroaches and mosquitoes, but our own lives. We can pass away at any time. There's nothing that makes us special just because you're young, just because you're in the US, just because, etc., whatever. You are not exempt from dying right now or in the next moment. And neither are your family members or friends. And I don't say this as a morbid kind of thought, but it's something that should fuel you, to motivate you to do what's good, right? We have so many people that are involved in activism that are motivated, right, to help others, right? Let's get on some of that. We can get some of that motivation as Buddhists too, but not from a place of anger, right? But from a place of concern for other beings, from a place of benevolence, metta, from a place of kindness, compassion, karuna, right? From a place of non-jealousy and rejoicing in others' wealth and success and happiness and well-being, mudita, and from a place of upekkha, looking upon without being perturbed, right? Without picking one side over the other, right? Without falling into this dichotomous, dualistic, binary thinking of how it's either all this way or all that way, right? Avoiding the two extremes by practicing this kind of equanimous or view that sees everything equally, right? Doesn't mean that you justify or condone or, certain things. That's not what we're talking about. But to be able to see clearly all sides and all things, right? And there's not even sides at that level, because talking about sides, it's not really equanimous anymore. So this is really my invitation to you. I don't really have much to say more than that. That's what I wanted to share with you. I know it's a little bit shorter than usual, but usually there's also questions. And today I don't see any questions. So I'll just say some more highs to the people that are in the chat. Hello to Samino. Hello to Marky. Hello to Matias. And, I don't know how to read Thai, but hello to you with the Thai name in Thai font, Thai letters. Yeah. So, yes, this is actually my final broadcast here at Empty Cloud. So lucky to be back another day, right? Unexpectedly with all of you. So happy to be able to finish my 5-part series, although it was only 4 episodes on the 5 spiritual faculties on the Panchindriya, right? And there's a question here by Sue. Dear Bhante, is there any advice you would give to lay practitioners to progress? What would you recommend? And do you have any strategies to practice the Eightfold Path? Yeah, I do. And that was this talk today, I think, is let's focus on others more. Let's focus on others. Not to the detriment of our own well-being, right? That's what I'm saying. But we have a tendency for modern people, Western people, or people, in cities, to be very self-focused. So let's pivot, right? Let's pivot on that perspective and start focusing on the well-being of others. Have more of a concern for others, right? Instead of waking up in the morning and thinking, what would I like to eat? What would I like to do? We think about, what would my mom and dad who live here with me, or my brother and sisters, or my partners, what would my kids like to do? And I should do what they want to do, right? And I really believe that when we see other people, the people that we love, the people that we care about happy, we also become happy, right? So it's not like you're losing out on anything. Every mother and father wants to see their kids happy. And when their kids are happy, one is happy. Every person who's in love with their partner wants to see their partner happy. So if you do what your partner wants to do and they're happy, you become happy because they're happy, right? Also a best friend wants to see their best friend happy. So once you make them happy, you also become happy. There's no one loses here, right? It's not a self-denying, right? Sacrificial thing that I'm proposing here. Our practice, our own meditation practice should not only be driven by our own inspiration, our own aspiration to be free from suffering for ourselves. Oh, my dukkha, oh, my anger, oh, my sadness, oh, my, all my problems, right? No, think about, like, my mom suffers, my children suffer, the neighbors are suffering. Like, there's all these horrible things going on in the world. That's why I should practice. I mean, that's a huge amount of fuel that you get. Like, it's unlimited fuel because there's unlimited beings who are suffering. I mean, there's no end to that motivation. You can go on forever. And that's why I sound so hyped when I'm here talking with you so many times, and some of you that met me in person. Because all this dukkha is my fuel for sukha, for happiness, right? It is the suffering and the urgency that we find ourselves in that motivates me to practice, right? If I only focus on my dukkha is very limited. I can make up excuses, right? My suffering is not that important. I don't have to meditate. I don't have to study. I don't have to do offerings. I don't have to do good karma. You know, it's not that my own suffering doesn't seem like that much of a motivation, right? But when you think about others, wow, there's so much there to work with, so much to drive you to practice, right? To sit on the cushion and make a firm determination. I will practice, right? I will practice so I can help myself, others, and all beings. Maha-Paññā, covering the entire universe, right? With this vast wisdom. P. Gurel Segrio says, Basicametica says, thank you. Excellent teaching. Dharma Learner, thank you, Bhante, for bringing so much energy while you were visiting Empty Cloud. Bring your life to practice. Oh, thank you so much, Dharma Learner. Christina says, thank you. And I think, yeah, that's good for today, everyone. Sud says, thank you. Yes, everyone. Okay, this is el último adiós, the final goodbye for now. So I hope that all of you have great fruits to your practice. I hope that you're able to practice well. And remember that the most important factor in your practice is actually to have good friends, kalyanamitas. So everyone here in the chat, I would like to invite you to get in contact with each other, or, get in contact with the Sangha here in Empty Cloud or your local Sangha. The best support that you can have is community, to have your kalyanamitas to help each other out. That is the entire holy life. So if you do not ever see me again, you have each other, and please, lean on each other and support each other and help each other, because the holy life is not possible without having that support of good friends in the spiritual path. So I hope to see you sometime in the future. And until then, may you be well, happy, comfortable, and peaceful. Sukhi Hotu. Bye-bye, everyone.